Good to go. Good evening from Kashmir and a warm welcome to Expert Talk series. My name is Akil Rashid and I'm the Research and Knowledge Hub Chief at JKPI. I'll be starting today's session and introducing the speaker. Jammu and Kashmir Policy Institute has initiated the Expert Talk series to engage experts, changemakers, pioneers from various walks of life to understand the dynamic context of implementing the UN Sustainable Development Goals on our agenda. The vision and intention of the Expert Talk series is to source inputs and recommendations from various experts in various fields pertaining to different sustainable development goals through one-on-one dialogues. In our previous sessions of the Expert Talk series, our guest speakers discussed the topics gender equality in entrepreneurship and business, role of civil society organizations in achieving gender equality and religion. Tonight, we are delighted to be joined by a globally recognized social entrepreneur who will be talking to us on the topic technology and gender equality. Elsa Marie De Silva is the founder and CEO of Red Dot Foundation India and president of Red Dot Foundation Global USA. Its platform SafeSty started in December 2012, crowdsources personal experiences of sexual violence and abuse in public spaces. It has become the largest crowd map on the issue in India and abroad. Uh, Elsa is a 2020 IWF Fellow and a Gratitude Network Fellows, 2019 Reagan Faisal Fellow, a 2008 Yale World Fellow, and an alumni of the Stanford Draper Hills Summer School of the US State Department's Fortune Mentoring Program. Oxford Chevening Gurukul and the Duke of Edinburgh's Commonwealth Leadership Program. She's also a fellow with Rotary Peace, Espin New Voices, Vital Voices, and BMW Foundation Responsible Leader. She is listed as one of BBC Hindi's 100 women and has won several awards, including Government of India, Niti Aayog's Women Transforming India Award, and the Digital Woman Award in Social Impact by She the People. In 2017, she was awarded the Global Leadership Award by Vital Voices in the presence of Secretary Hillary Clinton. She is also the recipient of Gold Steve Award for Female Executive of the Year, government or non-profit 10 or less employees in 2016. Her work has been recognized by the United Nations Alliance of Civilizations through the Intercultural Innovation Award, SDG Action Festival, and UN Foundation at the Solutions Summit 2016. On behalf of the entire team of JKPI, I welcome you tonight. Thank you very much for taking the time to be with us.
Thank you so much, Akhil and Jigyasa and the rest. I want to first acknowledge that, we are going through a really hard time. So I hope you are all taking care of yourselves, staying safe and staying at home. So first of all, thank you for having me. And, I'm really glad that I have an opportunity to share my work with you. And what I'm going to share is, not only what is relevant for sexual and gender-based violence, but this methodology can be used for any social issue, including, during COVID times or a disaster or a crisis, you can use the same methodology, the same tech platform in a way. So good evening, everyone. I'm Elsa, and I'm the founder of Red Dot Foundation. And I started on this journey about 8.5 years ago, where I launched Safe City in response to a horrific gang rape of Jyoti Singh on a bus in Delhi, which I'm sure all of you have heard of her. So that incident made me think about, the topic of sexual and gender-based violence, and it opened up the space around me for the discussion on the topic. If you're not aware, that sexual and gender-based violence is a pandemic. So whilst we are currently going through COVID-19, which is a pandemic, and you can see the impact of it, this is a silent pandemic that has been around for a long time, affecting on an average 1 in 3 women around the world. But in some countries like ours, it is definitely more than 33%. And more than half of these survivors experience it before the age of 16. And yet 80% of us never really talk about it or report it officially to the police. And when we think about sexual and gender based violence, we often use words like eve teasing, which trivializes it, or we use rape and assault, which is on the other extreme, that is very, very serious. But on a daily basis, there are many forms of it. Some of it are on the screen in front of you, and I've grouped it as non-verbal, verbal, and physical forms of it because it's important to give it a vocabulary. And we have normalized it because we experience it on a daily basis, and this has become part of our daily routine. So we tend to ignore it. People tell us, oh, don't report it because it's too trivial. But in effect, this has quite a debilitating effect on many people. We limit our choices, we limit our movements, we affect our mobility, we self-censor, and it affects our mental health. And there are many forms of it. Like I said, they're staring, ogling, taking pictures without permission, indecent gestures, showing pornography, commenting catcalls and sexual invites, which are all verbal forms of it, touching, groping, stalking. And it isn't only in the physical world, but also in the virtual world. And then, of course, sexual assault and rape. And so what we decided was to launch Safe City, a crowd map, where we encourage anonymous reporting of these experiences. It's completely anonymous. And the idea is to help people document their story. So we are not an SOS app. In the moment when you're experiencing it, we experiencing any situation, we don't expect you to pick up your phone, find the app, and send a message. But after you've had a chance to process it, we definitely do want you to record it. Because if you didn't record it, it never happened. There is a data gap that exists because of the normalization of this issue that makes it an invisible, social problem. The data that is in the official statistics does not reflect the true nature and size of the problem. And by documenting it, we visually represent it on a map. We look at it as location-based trends and patterns, and we try to use this data, which is information, to improve our collective awareness on the topic, either individually, making better choices for our safety because we are better prepared, knowing what will happen when and where, engaging our communities in dialogue and trust building with the authorities. So the aim of the app is really, and the app is a web app plus mobile apps on Android and iOS. We also have a missed call facility for India. We gather information, that is stories and incidents. We publish it. It's available open source. And then we have data dashboards where we present the patterns and trends by location and category, day of week and time of day. And the design of the app is to protect identity and privacy. We only collect what happened, where it happened, the date and time. We're not asking you to give your name, email, or even your IP address. We have created an empathy layer in the design of the app to help the survivor feel she's not alone in her journey. And I'm going to use the pronoun she throughout because by and large, women are the survivors that are reporting on our app, but we do have men also reporting. At the end of this report, we also give little nudged information on helplines, legal information, and you have the ability to search for the nearest hospital and police station. And our target audiences are two. One is information seekers who are looking for the helpline information or information on types of incidents so that they can make their neighborhood safer, or want to generate community support. And those who've experienced the incident themselves, those are personal stories that they are reporting, or they are reporting for others, and they're also logging in safety tips. This is what a crowd map looks like. This is for Delhi. For example, on the left-hand side is the map with a lot of bubbles with numbers in it, and those numbers represent the individual stories. But you can also read the stories on the right-hand side as you scroll down. And as you can see, you can filter the data either by type of assault or show incidents from a date range or a time of day. And the help page has countrywide, country-wise emergency numbers. It also has the hospitals and police stations, which you can search from your present location to the nearest one, and also the legal information that is mapped to the crime. So for example, if I'm reporting stalking, it will give me the IPC, the Indian Penal Code for stalking. So why are we collecting this information, and how does it help us? The information is absolutely crucial because, like I mentioned earlier, there is a data gap that exists, and we can't, even with the NCRB statistics, cannot see what is happening in our own location. And with this granular information on what happened, the location, date, time, age, gender, ethnicity, disability, sexual orientation, you can actually try to understand what is happening and what are the contributing factors that make it happen. There's also a secondary form that helps us understand the causation and correlation of that incident. We don't ask for the perpetrator's name, but we do want to understand some information about the perpetrator. For example, how many were there, who were the bystanders, how many were there, did they do anything, and where did it happen? Like, was it badly lit? Were there people around? Did you go to the police? So on and so forth. You can also pose a safety tip, and that's very important because sharing this information with each other is really building the community resilience. Our USP is low cost and it's a low tech solution. So to implement and replicate in different parts of the world is easy. We have partners in several cities, but also in several countries. And we always believe that technology is not enough. We have to always have that offline component where we work with people on the ground to understand the use of this app, understand the data that it is generating, and how would they use that data at their individual level or the community level, or work with institutions like police, municipal corporations, etc. We also map our work with SDGs 5, which is gender equality, 11, which is sustainable cities and communities, and 16, which is peace and justice. But we also, the other SDGs that are relevant to our work are 8, 10, 17. So how can crowdsourced data be made useful? So think about all the times you went out on the road and got harassed. Were you caught by surprise? Did it affect you? How did it affect you? But if you knew when you were going out that you probably would be commented upon, or you would be groped, would you have better responses or quicker responses or more effective responses? So normally when we are faced as human beings with threatening situations, there are three ways that you can respond. You can either flee the scene, or you fight back, or you freeze on the spot. And most often women freeze. And then later we beat ourselves up emotionally saying that we didn't respond in the right fashion. Now, I want to tell you that that is an appropriate response, freezing. So don't feel bad about it. But if you knew that this is a common kind of crime that happens in your neighborhood, could you have different responses? Yes, because many people respond differently, and by sharing of this information you can learn from each other. There are many ways. Also, as bystanders, how many of us are part of communities and our communities never do anything? Especially the men. Not all men are perpetrators, but they are definitely bystanders. And what's the most common thing? Remove your phone and film the whole incident rather than bringing help to the survivor. So again, how can you respond in such situations? And often, because a woman freezes, the response from a bystander, she didn't do anything, therefore I didn't think it was in my place to intervene. But of course, if you see somebody doing something wrong, you must intervene, but don't put yourself in danger. And then what is the role of institutions, whether it is campus officials, railway or transport officials, civic authorities, or police? And we have many examples where we've used the data in conjunction with the communities to help the police change their beat patrol or increase vigilance or place CCTV cameras at the right locations or release budgets for women's safety or work with authorities to fix broken infrastructure like poor street lighting or public toilets that don't work and are hotspots, and so on and so forth. So there are many ways that the data can be used once it is in the system. And again, some of these things I mentioned, but I'll talk about this one project we did pre-COVID with 20 college campuses in Maharashtra. And we had 100 campus ambassadors trained who were trained not only as peer educators, but also to identify the different forms of violence, trained in understanding the legislation that is in effect, and then uh, creating mechanisms for their fellow students to talk about these things, but also respond in the situation, as well as working with their college campus authorities for safer spaces. And we had a great response. So the way that it works is collecting the data is very important. It's done in conjunction with the community, and it helps us understand the issue at the location context. And it gives you the space to start the dialogue on a topic that is highly taboo, highly controversial, and highly silent, on gender, sexuality, sexual violence, and the role of culture. Also, discussion on local statistics and creation of the space for understanding your legal rights, because we don't have a problem with legislation in India. It's just that people are not aware. And then, of course, organizing and mobilizing the community to understand who are the key stakeholders. Not always policing is the problem, is the solution. You can engage your community leaders, like religious elders, for example. They are a great community to talk to the men and boys because they have influence with them. You can use key events in your community to actually have these community-based discussions. So, for example, when they had a village festival, the sarpanch of a village invited the people to come and listen to us talk about sexual violence and the whole data of that community and what could be the possible solutions. And then, of course, the data itself generates understanding of what are the factors that are causing it to happen. Maybe you need more awareness, maybe you need better lighting. It really depends on what's showing up in the data. This is what the data looks like, and we extracted in Excel files. We are experimenting now with different visualization dashboards. You can see it on our website. And we also, have some successes over the last 8 years. We have the largest crowd map in the world on this topic with 25,000 reports. We have partners in almost 10 countries. We've engaged 1 million citizens over the last 8 years. We've trained 30,000 people in being peer educators. We've trained 500 youth leaders, and we are very much present on social media. So I would encourage any of you, if you want to partner with us, do a little project in your community. If you want to do a campus project, or even in your residential area, do get in touch. These are coordinates. Do follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and write to me if you need any help. I'm going to stop sharing.
Thank you so much, Elsa. That was a very elaborate and very, very articulate presentation. Thank you for all the information. We will definitely be developing our own publication on your, on your app and everything that you've mentioned. We will be presenting report on the same as well on this entire presentation and this entire expert talk series. So we thank you for that presentation. Two things that really caught my attention about the way you have approached the problem is, one is about the empathy reporting. That's something that is very new, because one of those things in our society and culture is that there is a taboo around reporting, because in many societies there is this element of honor linked to the information going out. Many times the abuse also happens at home, and there are close, like, community bonding and, you know, family bonding, and you know the perpetrator. Most of the perpetrators these days of any kind of abuse is known to the victim, and it's very difficult to report. Now, I'd like you to let us know a little more about about empathy reporting. What is it? What does that look like? Do you train people in it? Like when it comes to the state authorities, like when it comes to the police and others, where you actually report the cases. What has been your experience? Has any training in empathy reporting actually helped? Because often they are the ones who do not make it a safe space for the victim to come out with all the details. It's more of just, you know, you give us all the information, and then while somebody is sharing, they often have this experience of being judged for being as honest. And also victim blaming is a very big deal. So I'd like you to let us know a little more about the empathy reporting.
Thank you, Shoini. This is a great question. So we have an empathy in design. So the design is has an empathy lens. And what I mean by that is, not only is it completely anonymous, it's the way the app has been structured. Because over the years, so we started off with different technologies, right? We had Ushahidi, then we also added our own mobile app. And last year when COVID struck, we used this time to rebuild our app again and include all the feedback that we'd got over the years. And what was the feedback that we got over the years? That even if it was anonymous reporting, the person reporting felt very lonely because it was emotionally triggering to put in those details. So the way the report is designed is one question at a time, with calming colors, with sensitive questioning, and with little nudges that, you know, kind of give you the impression that you have a friend walking with you on the journey. So that's the empathy lens in the design of the technology. We do a lot of workshops on gender sensitivity with different groups of people, trying to help them understand unconscious and implicit bias and helping them challenge it. And that builds empathy. But it can't be done in one workshop. It's a constant journey that one has to question oneself and be conscious about it. Even if you are well trained, you might slip up. So it's a journey, but at least we encourage them to start and begin in that journey. Now, how does this help Safe Cities data set help? I think first of all, as you rightly said, when we go with our individual story, we are often victim blamed and shamed, right? And that creates this culture of silence where the onus of proving one's innocence is on the survivor, whilst the perpetrator goes away scot-free and gets bolder over a period of time. And with anonymous reporting, you can feel free to share your incident, which to us is the first step in the healing process. And we hope that you would then go, you know, few steps further in seeking professional help. Now, anonymous reporting is very valuable because otherwise that story has never made it to the official data set. And whilst if you wanted recourse for your individual story, you would have gone to the police station and filed an FIR. But the very fact that most of them come to us means that maybe they don't want to engage with the formal system, but they trust us to share their story and they want the system to change. How do you want a system to change if you don't share your story? So this is a way where you can change the system. And how do we change that system? We are building the collective intelligence around this issue. We are working on patterns and trends at the local level. We are working with the police and the civic authorities on patterns and trends at the city level. And based on the information that is emerging, you can have many interventions, again, driven at the individual level, the community level, or the institutional level. And our role as Red Dot Foundation is to build capacity of everyone in this space, the individual, the community, and the institution, because we should not be present everywhere. And that's our philosophy. Even if we work on the ground or on a college campus, we work with the individuals, build their capacity, give them these skills so that they can use it for themselves. And in a way, that's participatory democracy. You have a voice, you have an agency, you're using evidence-based data to reclaim your rights.
Thank you so much, Elsa. Indeed, you cannot be present everywhere, and it's all about enabling a sort of change, like being that nudge factor, and then see it pan out. So my second question has two aspects to it. First is the fact that when you get these stories and data, and there is this element of anonymity, how do you verify the data? Is it that you take it on face value that somebody is just sharing because they just want to share, and that every story has multiple lenses in the way things are perceived? So first is, how do you verify the data in your empathy reporting system? Second is that when you have actually worked with so many college campuses and young people, what kind of response have you had from these departments, college departments and students, regarding including these skills, including gender sensitization and elements of understanding violence and abuse in their curriculum, perhaps, or actually making it a mandatory part of the education system? Do you have, like, over the last 8 years, when you've engaged with so many youth leaders and so many campuses, you have country chapters also, has there been any such change that you have noticed, that people are maybe advocating for more of this in their curriculum, or they believe that this should become a part of the curriculum? Because I haven't personally heard of anything such. Even today in India, I mean, gender sensitization as a part of the education that we receive in schools, colleges, and universities is just not something that's there. So
you're right. You're absolutely right. So we are working on getting the education department to include it, but that takes time. But having said that, over the last 8.5 years, we worked with many colleges and schools in the cities that we are present in. That's Mumbai, Delhi, Pune, Satara, and Patna. And these colleges every year come back to us for workshops with their teachers, with their non-teaching staff, with their students. And for us, that is the long-term partnership. We don't want to do stuff which is one-off. We want to constantly have this long-term relationship. In fact, we help many of them set up their policies on sexual harassment at the workplace and in the college campuses. We also consult with some of them on their committees, on their investigation committees. And we are constantly doing workshops. So the partnership is with the college, and the college assigns the students to work with us. So some of them have projects that are graded. So they look at our data, they do community-based projects based on the data. Or we might do a semester with them. Different colleges have different requirements. So either they could be, projects under NSS, or projects where whichever department, maybe sociology or something, gives them a project with us and we grade them, or with say mass communications, we work with them on the entire semester on gender sensitivity in mass communications and then help them with their grading. So there are different kind of arrangements that we have with different colleges. That is one. What was your first question? I can't remember.
Fine. My first question was about how within your empathy reporting approach, where you focus on anonymity and providing that handheld support for somebody who's sharing their story, how do you verify that data?
Okay, yes, that's right. That's also a very important question. So the nature of crowdsourced information is it's crowdsourced and it's anonymous. So there is no way of verifying it, and that's an acceptable data set. How does the data set work is every report is read at the back end before it is published on the front end. And over the years, we have developed our own internal guidelines to understand if there is personal information being recorded or if it doesn't meet our standards of the kind of violence. So to give you an example, some years ago, we had a bunch of reports come from a particular area where, and at that time we could see the IP address, but it came from a place in South India where this person was deeply disturbed about his previous employer and the work culture over there. And he kept reporting, I think it was a he, I'm not sure, but the person kept reporting the same thing, but it sounded also that he was a little bit disturbed. So we weren't sure that it met our criteria, but we definitely knew this person needed help. Now it was anonymous. So we went on to our public social media pages and said, we've received a bunch of a bunch of reports recently from this area. Could you please get in touch with us? Because we'd like to discuss it. And if you need any help, these are our coordinates. But the report stopped and nobody got in touch with us, But in another case where they took a name of a professor, they took the name of a department head of a premier college, we asked for an email and a number. We got it. We had a conversation with them. It wasn't the survivor who reported, it was a friend. We asked this friend if he would ask the survivor to get in touch with us. And we gave them a bunch of ways that they could take it forward, including getting in touch with the women's cell. And we gave them strategies on how to not disclose the person's identity whilst keeping it anonymous. They decided ultimately not to take it forward. But these are some of the ways. On a weekly basis, we get people who want help, legal help, counseling help. They write to us. They don't post it necessarily on the crowd map. So we also have our contact details there, and we then partner with other nonprofits like Majlis, who provides legal aid. We have counseling centers that we partner with who provide free counseling. So we provide individual help in different ways, and the anonymous reporting is seen as a data set. So if there is a false report, the entire trend has to be false for it to be a trend. So if it's just one report and say 1,000, it will not stand out.
Thank you so much for clarifying that. I would now pass on the mantle to my co-facilitator for the evening, Jigyasa, who will be presenting the next few questions. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sohini. Okay, so since you talked about the design of the technology, so one thing that came to my head was regarding the human bias that we usually receive, and it's, I guess, one of the major debates that we see nowadays in terms of emerging technologies. So how your organization ensure that no human bias, say for example, a particular stereotype the person usually perceive, is not passed in the design of the technology?
So again, what is the information that we are asking you? What happened, where it happened, the date and time, right? And with those, we try to look at the patterns and trends, and we don't make any assumptions. We go back to the community and say, this is what's emerging from your data. Let's have a discussion. And in that discussion, you can then talk about why it's happening, what is happening, and where is any bias, if any. But in reality, when you look at the trend, so what is the top 3 trends? Maybe the top 3 trends are commenting, or it is groping, or it is touching. So if everybody is experiencing groping and touching and commenting, where is the bias in that? The bias could be that it's heavily skewed towards women experiencing it, right? So you can talk about that. Why is it happening?
Okay, thank you for that answer. And I guess one thing that we cannot miss in nowadays is the current situation, that is COVID. And we know that most of the people have shifted to the virtual platforms, and at the same time, there have been increasing cases of online harassment. And if I'm not wrong, so your organization recently partnered with Bumble, and you initiated a particular, if I'm not wrong, the name is Stand for Safety. So you came up with this particular thing. And I guess this also made me think about how the entire phenomena of online harassment, it is different when you observe it in terms of men and women. So based on your observation, uh, what do you think are the major factors contributing to this problem, that men and women, they face this phenomenon, this problem differently?
So we host a lot of workshops. So we have over 30,000 people who've gone through our workshops. And just before COVID, we had a project in Delhi where we worked with 1,000 young men, specifically workshops with young men. And so the harassment that women face is different from the harassment that men face. And the reasons for harassing are different in both cases. And the way they respond is also different, right? So that's why you have to have that sensitivity in how people respond and the pressures that they go through to stay within the silos that sociocultural norms dictate. Having said that, when you create a safe space to talk about it, we can then challenge these sociocultural norms, right? And we can start to listen to each other and also keep our minds open as to how you can do it differently. And that, in a way, data helps. Data is so powerful. So coming back to your earlier question on bias, it's very important to see the patterns and trends as well as read these stories, because otherwise you're not engaging with any information that is personal on this topic. And we found that young men actually want to be part of the solution. They just don't know how. And when you show them avenues to provide action or support or solidarity or be better bystanders, they do take up that role. And the workshops that we did in Delhi showed that 3 months after these young men went through the workshops, the harassment actually decreased. And we want to do a longitudinal study to see, after a year or after 2 years, does it really make a big difference? But I can tell you, again, to Shoini's earlier question, over 8.5 years, I can tell you the conversations have increased. More people are willing to engage. Yes, sexual harassment, gender sensitivity is not part of the formal curriculum, but more institutions want us to do these workshops and are open to it. Now you come to online harassment, which with tech, it's not just during COVID. Tech is part of our lives, right? We live on our phone pretty much for half our day, if not more. We are all addicted. With Napinai, who was your guest yesterday, and also with Bumble, we are doing a series of workshops. So with Napinai, we are doing a series of workshops in Western India for both the US Consulate and the British High Commission on Cyber Sati. That is, be a friend to somebody who has experienced online harassment and bullying, making them understand. So we do the gender part of it and she does the law. But we help them think through the socio-cultural norms that contribute to this culture of, this violence, then helping them understand the different forms of it, because online is no different from the physical form. It's just that it's a different space. It's the same behavior, right? And the same contributing factors that cause that behavior to happen. And then what is the law which will help you with a remedial measure? Now with Bumble, they came to us because they are a dating site and they want people to have a great time online without having to feel fearful for their safety. And they want people to be more aware of how to navigate these spaces in a safe manner. So we help them design the Stand for Safety guide, which will educate people on how to navigate these spaces. First of all, do you even know that what happened to you is a crime or is sexual harassment or is bullying or online harassment? You don't know. And if you knew, then what are the remedies available to you under the law? And will you then have the courage to go ahead and do it? And if you don't have that, if you don't have that inclination to make a formal complaint and you still want the system to change, then do go and report on Safe City, because that data is valuable and we do work with authorities and we encourage not only we have to do it, but even you have access to this data. So if you are sitting in a small town in India or another city in India, you don't have to wait for us to open our offices. Our data is open source. Take it, use it, and engage with your local community and your local institutions and say, this is the number of reports. What do you want? What do you think we can do to solve it? And when you approach somebody with the intention to collaborate, the resistance is less. So another question that you'd asked me earlier was, what has been the response from police and other civic authorities? I have only found that they want to collaborate. See, everybody is afraid of being shamed on the media, right? And this is open source data. Our platform is open source. So they can't deny that these things are happening. They want to be seen doing something, and we want to help them to do it. So the only way you can convince them is with data, and then, do it with them.
Thank you so much, ma'am. And I guess you have pointed out so many things in this particular answer. It's not just about, having those evidence-based reporting that actually builds that required pressure on authorities to take required steps, but it also engages people. So I could say, like, you're increasing some civic engagement as well as participatory democracy at the same time. And it was really good to hear from you that institutions are actually willing to have such workshops, even though it's not a part of the curriculum. So I guess a good hope that we are seeing in India. And from this, I would like to lead you a bit broader question. So since your organization is working in different countries, if I'm not wrong, there are around 10 countries that you have been working. So if I ask you to just share from your observation, what has been the trends in terms when you just compare those countries specifically with India? So what has been the basic trend in terms of technology and reporting?
So we don't work directly in those countries. We are the tech and data partner for several of these nonprofits and other institutions in those countries. They use our tech platform and we help them with analysis of the data. So first of all, I have to tell you that sexual and gender-based violence is different in different places. Even what we are seeing is the top trend in Delhi versus the top trend in Bombay is different. So you can't compare the two, and I definitely don't like comparing countries. I'll give you examples of how the data has been used. So one of our partners is in Kenya, in Kibera, which is the largest slum in Nairobi. Now it's an informal settlement and Google Maps don't even work. That means when we say location, we want you to put the street name. That street name doesn't exist because there is no street name. It's kacha roads, So yet we were able to collect almost 2000 stories and be able to cluster them based on descriptors. big mosque, pink building, this bar, that, school. And she was able to help her community think about where these things were happening. One of the hotspots was near a mosque where people, the young men would hang around and intimidate the girls passing by on their way to school. They would grope them and touch them, feel them. And in Kibera, you don't change your route, because if you are found in a different path, you could be trafficked. So girls either drop out of school or they just silently bear this behavior. Now, she invited the Imam of the mosque to see the data, and he was shocked. He started preaching in his sermons and talking about it and telling the men and boys that you can't be, doing it. And that stopped because it really helped. Same methodology we used with the Sarpanch of a village in Satara. So engaging the leaders that people look up to and they telling them is more effective than we telling them, and if it comes from a man, so even a boy, a young boy. So in Delhi, one of the hotspots was a public toilet in Lal Kuwa. What would happen is the toilets had poor lighting, broken windows, broken doors, and on top of that, the boys would go and film the women whilst they were doing their business. When we showed them the data, the boys were shocked, because they were challenged, and they said, okay, we want to, be part of this campaign. They started educating their peers about, why it is wrong to do so. So it's about, adopting that approach that, okay, how can we change this? Are you aware that your behavior is impacting somebody else's life and it's making that person miserable, drop out of school, lose, time by taking a longer route, and so on and so forth? And understanding who to bring into the room also shows up in the data, because you can then see, okay, who do you want to engage? Is it the shopkeeper? Is it the school authority? Is it the community elder? Is it the religious leader? Who do you want to bring into to be part of the solution? Now, in Kenya, they're trying to change the definition of sexual harassment. In Malaysia, they're collecting the data to introduce a new law. In Cameroon, they don't have a law, and the data is being used to support that demand for a law. So different places are using the data in many different ways.
Thank you, ma'am. And specifically when you talked about your intervention and, how you are assisting in terms of law and, defining the entire definition of GPV, it just remind me of a conversation that I was having in morning with Sohiniti regarding various interventions that could be done. So I guess before moving forward, I would like to call Sohiniti and ask her to just share that reflection and ask a question on that part, because that would be really interesting, I believe.
Thank you, Jigyasa. This is just something I cannot resist asking, as I work with religious leaders and I work with the kind of influence that religious leaders and community leaders have on the behavior of communities. So how important it is for any kind of behavioral change intervention that anyone would want to expect. So what I really wanted to reflect on was that this is what I have noticed while working with communities myself, that in South Asia, if you look at, like you mentioned, that the definition of gender-based violence or sexual harassment is being renegotiated and changed. So that brings me to, in Kenya, if I'm not wrong, that is what you mentioned. So what I really wanted to reflect on was that in every culture, there is a certain level of violence which is legitimized as something which is very cultural. So
you mean normalized?
Yes, like normalized, and in that sense,
because it might not be legitimized under the law. Like yes, in our country, it's not it's not legal.
It's almost like the way you look at, how there is a customary law and there's the law, and there's always a tussle, like where do you negotiate that boundary? Like what is it that people who are the keepers of the informal community norms, how much are they ready to accept that there are certain things that has to change, even in terms of how the community looks at a problem. So when you have rightly mentioned interventions where you had to engage, say, panchayat leaders or religious leaders and people who have an influence on the community, what has been your experience of explaining to them where these these definitions fit in, when it comes to that they are not going to lose out on anything if they support these ideas of what constitutes violence, like that entire awareness and sensitization that this kind of behavior is actually impacting lives in a negative way, and that it is only normal, if we are to look at ourselves as a progressive society, to consider tweaking the cultural norms, which has been customary for so long, but to actually have an approach.
So first of all, I want to tell you that norms can change. Culture is not static. Culture changes. So for example, 25 years ago, smoking was accepted. Today, there was a lot of investment in no smoking campaigns, and now you can't smoke inside buildings, right? I used to be in the aviation industry, and you still see no smoking signs, and you wonder, like, why are they putting this no smoking sign? Because it was not very long ago that smoking was fine. So if you can change cultures. Culture's never static, and culture's never the same. We assume that culture is the same everywhere. So we have to get it out of our heads that can't be changed. It can be changed. What can help it change? I think data can help it change. And anonymous data sets like Safe City does is important. I'll tell you why. If you went to complain about your individual story, they would turn around and say, you caused it to happen. You were in the wrong place at the wrong time. You were wearing the wrong clothing. And you waste a lot of time defending yourself and explaining to the other person. But when you take a data set that shows 20 women experience something similar in this period of time at the same location, they can't ask you who are the 20 women, call them, why were they there? No, nobody has the time for that. They are actually forced to think about, why did it happen to 20 women? And are we okay with that? Are we okay to have that happen? And no community will say that they're okay, because that they cannot dispute, even if the data is unverified. So they have to acknowledge it, accept it, and decide that if it is inappropriate, then what are they willing to do to change it? And that's where that community collaboration comes in, where you try to find the common ground. I'm also Rotary Peace Fellow, so you find ways. So we are not asking you to use the data and punitive measures to punish people. We are asking you to look at it to either reform somebody's behavior or to prevent it from happening. And so you find common ground with these people. And that also takes some kind of investment to understand who are these people, what makes them tick, what are they passionate about, what are they working towards. They're all fathers, daughters, they're all fathers, they're all brothers, they're all husbands, So I'm sure they care about the safety of the women in their families.
That's the thing, Elsa. In our society, when we talk about safety, we only think about protecting the honor of the women in a certain way, but we don't look at the psychological implications of different kinds of violence that women often go through, but are not aware, are probably culturally conditioned to not report or talk about, and also to not address. And a lot of that also has to do with the community norms, as I mentioned. And this is my personal experience, that a lot of things are normalized within cultures. And because it has been so for generations, it's very difficult to bring in new ideas where all of a sudden certain things become very evident as, okay, this needs to change. But then who takes that initiative?
It's very difficult for women. And it's also intergenerational, because older women have accepted it, and younger women are, being told, no, you can be bold. So no, change doesn't happen overnight, right? But there are things that we have seen that you can do, which are community based, that the community decides that they want to do, and that's really the first step. And when they see success from small changes that happen, they then push the boundaries to actually look for larger changes, you see. So we never go in with the assumption that we're going to change anything. We have to work with the community, and it's one step at a time.
I'll just give you a simple example of, I think that's one of the most important examples we have, relevant examples we have today, is that even today, marital rape is not criminalized. And there is a lot of conversations around whether or not to, it is addressed under domestic violence, or it is something that needs a separate category and a separate ethical framework to, talk about. I mean, even there is a resistance amongst communities to talk about marital rape, that there is anything that can be marital rape. And that is something like, these are the kind of nuances which are still, I think it's going to take us a long time to address this, to get there, to actually find a way to bring the different stakeholders together to actually talk about it. These are difficult conversations which are often avoided. And a lot of that, I think, has directly a link with how many women actually even report on domestic violence, and whether or not they can tell apart if there has been a case of marital rape, if that falls within this circumstance. And a lot of my friends and a lot of women I've spoken to, I collect women's stories for my blog, and I have had many conversations where I have found that women are often very confused about what constitutes violence. Have they experienced it? Maybe they're having a psychological impact and they can't tell it apart. We don't have as much of information about counseling services which throws some light on this. And even if through, say, counseling services, somebody gets to know that, okay, they have been a victim of violence, that they are going through some kind of trauma, they are going through something, then the next question comes, how do they define it? What do they do about it? What kind of intervention would actually help? And there is no such information out there in the public domain. And as data sets, they definitely help us map that similar experiences are happening elsewhere. But these experiences would also come with a certain degree of self-awareness, right? So if I'm telling you a story, say I'm somebody who's reporting, I need to be self-aware about what kind of issues I'm facing. If I don't even understand what part of my experience actually constitutes a certain level of violence, or what kind of violence, then I wouldn't be able to report accurately. And that would also, deny the person who's actually recording the data that much of information. And Absolutely. Then when we're looking at the case, it just doesn't address certain aspects of it.
Absolutely. And that's why Safe City has been trying to make more visible the invisible. The stories help others break their own silence, because now they know that they are not alone. We don't actually have I don't think we have a lot of marital rape stories, because until COVID, we weren't mapping domestic violence. But we were mapping more of public space violence, online harassment, all that. But even there, people didn't know that what they were experiencing is a crime. And therefore, we have to build that ability of us to trust our intuition, our gut, that if it doesn't feel right, we need to acknowledge it. And that means it's not right. I want to address, so whilst we don't directly work on domestic violence, I do understand domestic violence because I have a personal experience of it. But I want to say that the way we address it is by creating safe spaces in public, on transport, at the workplace. We are helping more women feel confident navigating the city, the labor market, and other spaces so that she can become financially independent. And if she were then to be in a domestic violence situation or experience marital rape, you have the ability to walk away because you have choices. With financial independence, you have choices. And that to me is very important. So my way of contributing towards that issue is strengthening a city's response to the violence that women face and creating that confidence to navigate the city and access all opportunities available to that person.
Much, Elsa. I'm pretty sure we have a lot of audience questions. Jigyasa, do we have audience questions? We may not have a lot of time left. So in the interest of time, we'll just take around 2 questions before we round up the discussion. We're already overshooting time, but I'm pretty sure that these questions are very important. We will also have them curated and emailed to you, so that we can have your answers and share them on social media so that it can reach more women. Jigyasa, if you would take over for the question and answer part, please. We'll take just 2 questions and then we'll round it up. Thank you.
Thank you, Soinidhi. And apologies, but I don't think we can take 2 questions. We can take hardly like 1 question. So, because it's already 31. So, I guess 1 question that was already there in my mind, and we received very similar questions. So I'm just going to combine both of these and ask 1 question on that part. So just moving away from your career and coming, I mean, not moving away, I would say, but moving away from safe city for a point. So since you also mentioned about civil aviation, so it's one industry that is usually perceived as, for male, and, only men are the people who should be there in the aviation industry. And then now you have Safe City, which is, I would say, it's a completely women-led organization, because even when you're talking about technology, I could see the entire board members is completely women. So if I ask you, like, what have been your experience of working in these industries, which are usually conceived as, for men only? So have you ever experienced any specific based on your particular gender identity? So what have been your experience?
Actually, aviation has a lot of women, but at the lower levels, because a lot of the frontline staff are women. It's as you grow up the career ladder that you find more men heading the leadership positions, which is no different from many industries. I was one of the few vice presidents at Kingfisher Airlines, and that was about 15 years ago. So I was like one of very few leaders in the aviation space. Yes, I faced discrimination, but at that time I didn't even think about it because I was just fighting to survive in my role. There was no quotas, there was no talk about gender equality, there was no posh act, nothing at that point in time. And I worked really, really hard to get to where I was. Of course, there was discrimination, but I didn't know it till I started doing the work at Safe City. And my personality is such that if I want to do something, nothing can stop me. I will always find a way. I will figure it out. And I never, I'm perseverant, I'm resourceful, and very industrious. So there's no way that I wouldn't get it done. At Safe City, because we are working specifically on women's rights and violence against women, prevention of violence against women and girls, it didn't make sense to have men, at the top. And we're a very small team. We do have a lot of men and boys at the volunteer and the intern level, and we do have a couple of men in our team. So our communications officer is Aniket, our tech lead is Sagar. We have Harish Iyer, who is India's leading LGBTQ activist on our board, advisory board, and he's a really dear friend and a collaborator. So we do have men. I will say we have diversity. So I have all kinds of people on my team. which was even the case in aviation. In my department, even though nobody told me that I needed to have more women, I always wondered why there were no women. And I would tell HR, I will not close this position till you bring me CVs by women. And they said, but you know, the engineering colleges only have men. And I said, I didn't ask you for engineers. You know, why don't you look beyond? I want these skills, you know, and I gave logical thinking, analytical thinking, all those kind of skills, which don't necessarily come, surface on your resume. So I had 33% women, and I had all religious, uh, people from all different religions. I had different, I never looked at any of that. I went purely by merit, but I think in my subconscious, I was always looking at diversity. And similarly, at Safe City, I have a diverse range of cognitive ability. I have people who don't speak English. I have people from different religions. I have different gender. We've had different sexual orientation as well. So we believe in creating safe spaces for people to work, and through that diversity, we all benefit because they bring perspectives that we don't have.
Thank you very much, ma'am, for this answer. And I guess I actually asked this question very deliberately because we asked this question even yesterday as well in the session, because there's one thing which is usually associated when we talk about gender equality is that whenever you're talking about gender equality, you're simply talking about women, you know, you're not talking about men. Gender equality is something when you are talking about each and every gender. Okay, so it's very important to understand that thing. And second is important to have participation from everyone. It's not just about women. So like it is very important. But one thing that you mentioned about receiving CVs and those skills, so it just remind me of the participation of women in STEM, like science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. So it's still very low. It's increasing, but it's still very low. So I guess one of these area that we need to understand why it's still low and how we can actually increase this entire thing. But definitely
I
merit
think
is
it's
more
also the
important than anything
design.
else.
I think it's also the design of our education system where you can mix and match subjects. For example, I was extremely good at mathematics, but I did not want to take science. So I ended up taking arts and graduating in English literature. Okay. But my cousin in the UK, she's a doctor and she could take music and philosophy as well as medicine. So I think our education system is to blame for that, where we kind of start telling people, you know, you have to think in a particular way. And we have to deconstruct that. And another thing is that it doesn't mean that if you were terrible in maths or science earlier on, you can't pick it up later in life. For example, I have no tech background, but I run an organization that is heavily tech based. And nothing is rocket science except for rocket science. So I want to tell everyone out there that you can do whatever you want. And it doesn't mean as a founder that I have to have every skill. I can supplement by having another person on my team who brings that skill. And yes, my partner at the tech partner is Ritu David. She's the founder of her own tech company, and she brings that skill set. But I also have Napanai, who is a Supreme Court advocate, and another person, Prathama, who runs her own company on urban design. And all of these perspectives helps make the work that we do at Safe City much, much stronger.
Just now, I guess I completely agree with you on point of education system, because I really wanted economics, but no one allowed me to have it without maths. So that was a problem with me as well. And even when I really want to have artificial intelligence with peace building, no one allowed me to have that again. So that's definitely a problem. And I guess another thing is how our mentality is being molded from the very childhood, our upbringing. It never, maybe, it never gives an exposure to us that, yeah, you can also be an astronaut. This is also one of the fields that you can actually look at. So I guess secondly is that thing that we need to be looking at. And thank you, ma'am. It was really good to talk to you and learn about the diversity that you have within your team, where you are actually taking and bringing in different skill set to actually, apply it for a common good. So that's really, really nice to hear about this thing. And now, because we are obviously running out of time, so without speaking more, I will simply pass on the mental to Sohini to please ask the word of thanks.
Thank you, Jigyasa. Thank you, Elsa, for sharing your vision and your model that you've been working on, and the knowledge that you've gathered from these 8 years of experience. It is priceless, and it definitely gives us perspective on what could be done. There is a long way to go indeed, and this discussion doesn't end here. 1 hour is simply not enough, but we're really grateful that you took the time to be here with us today to share with us, and to also invite us and many others who would wish to collaborate at some point. So thank you so much for that open and warm gesture. And I'd also like to thank everyone who's tuned in and who's learning with us every weekend. This is like our favorite part of the week, because we get to actually dialogue with pioneers and change makers, and those who are blazing their own trail in finding solutions to problems. At Jammu and Kashmir Policy Institute, we believe in a bottom-up approach. We believe that change happens at the community level, and that policymaking should include these kind of cases and ideas, and look at these models to rethink the way we should actually look at a problem. So having said that, thank you so much for being a part of this initiative. And we look forward to hearing from you more in the future and connecting with you for more collaborative efforts. And thank you to the entire team for obviously always holding up the space and making this happen. We cannot do anything without you. And thank you, my co-facilitator, Jigyasa. Thank you for managing everything. We had a technical difficulty today, which we managed in time. And it always helps to see the team come together to manage everything the way we do. So thank you so much. Have a good evening, everyone. And yes, that'll be all from me. Thank you so much. Any last comments, Elsa?
No, thank you. Just like I said earlier, I don't have all the answers. So I would invite all of you to collaborate and add your wisdom to what I'm doing and make it better. Thank you. Have a great weekend.